I mean, it's sad that Mike passed away, but I'm so thankful, our family is so thankful. Mike had 5 extra years because of the generosity of a donor. The next thing, if you want to make a donation, there's a number of mental health organizations. Pick anyone that means something to you if you want, and donate. Mike was a groundbreaker when it came to actually sharing with everybody that he suffered from mental illness. And it was at a time when most people didn't talk about it, and it did affect his career as well. And he would really appreciate that donation. And finally, thank you. It's been said before, but I'll say it again. Mike loved entertaining the troops. And maybe it was because, for so many years we lived on that air base in Ramstein, Germany, and he was so close, he understood it. And he understood Dad's career as well. He was born in France, moved to Nova Scotia, then he lived in Germany, and finally, thank God, we moved to Ottawa. But it's a hard life being a soldier. That's not funny. Who is that? Mickey, well, I had a... Anyway, getting back to it. Do something to support the troops or the veterans out there. I mean, even if you just go buy a drink at your local Legion, you'll be helping our soldiers and our veterans. There's nothing wrong with drinking. Anyhow, okay, enough of that stuff. Let's laugh some more. We've got a few comedians coming up right now, ladies and gentlemen. They're gonna tell stories about meeting Mike or hanging out with Mike, or I actually don't know what they're gonna say, but it better fucking be funny. I'm gonna start. Sorry, I didn't mean to drop the F-bomb. Something came over me. I'm going to start off by bringing up a good friend of mine. I met him almost 30 years ago. He was a teenager singing lead vocals in a rock band that I recorded when I had my recording studio. And he's done a lot of things. He's acted in a lot of movies, and he's been around Ottawa for many years. And of course, done a lot of stand-up comedy. And he has a story to tell you about my brother. Please welcome to the stage, Mr. Luigi Sarcino. Yo, 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 yo! All right. And now I'm going to pass the baton off to you, and you pass it on to the next comedian.
Okay.
And so on, and so on.
I feel like, is it okay if I use the podium mic? I have notes. I prepared notes.
I said
also, I'm a little anxious, but
comedy,
I'm
Lou.
super drunk. What? Oh, yeah, that's right. I'll bring my notes with me. Wow, this is a lot like Thursday night at Yucks. So, there's a lot I want to say, I guess, about Mike. First of all, thank you to JP and to the MacDonalds for the opportunity to speak today. And it's really great to see this many people who love Mike in the same room. It's a very endearing thing and a real testament to the kind of guy that he was. Back in 1985, I was 18, and I was in a band, as JP had mentioned, and I'd started doing stand-up. And Howie Wagman, who is the manager at Yuck Yucks, had told me at the time to come down. You got to come and see this guy, Mike MacDonald. Mike MacDonald, right? And I was full of piss and vinegar, and I, thought I was the bee's knees. Is that something the kids still say? The bee's knees? Probably not. Okay. Also, bees don't have knees. Let's be precise, okay? Because that's just dumb. And I remember going to the green room, and Mike was sitting at the table by himself. There's no one else in the green room, which should have been a tip. And he was writing notes on the back of a Export A green pack, right? He was writing out his set. And I sat down next to him, and I'd heard some things about Mike, and, it's no secret that back in the day, Mike was a little bit intimidating, right? At least if you were a new comic. And I I sat down and kind of clammed up for a few seconds, and I thought, well, I know his brother. Maybe I can instigate some kind of conversation. And I leaned into Mike and was like, hey, I'm in a band, and just recorded with your brother, JP, to which Mike responded, well, good for you. I was like, I guess it is good for me. I don't understand what we're doing right now, Mike. And good for you. And that was Mike all over, you know. Like, the thing about watching him was that try to keep pace with the jokes. The thing, you okay? Do you want it? Everything's good? All right. The thing about watching Mike, at least for me, was that he just took over the stage. You know, Mike was quite literally comedy. And his mannerisms, I mean, the material was brilliant. There was no question about that. But the way he delivered it was very Mike, right? As I'm sure I don't have to tell you guys. And I can't tell you how much I learned. I said learned and not stole, right? Learned? Okay, learned from Mike. Not the least of which was to be genuine and to be authentic and to be as funny as you can be, to make a joke as good as it can be. And I remember that same night that I met him, talking to Howie afterwards, and Howie had mentioned that Mike actually stuck around to watch my set. Now, I don't know what he thought, although I am choosing to believe that he loved it. Okay. But one thing I'll never forget about Mike is that he was always so reverent about comedy and always spoke of it lovingly. And of the craft lovingly, you know. And I can remember in later years talking to Mike about the Beatles, of course, as I'm sure many people did, and talking to him about punk bands and having conversations about the Buzzcocks and Stiff Little Fingers and sort of developing a common ground in that regard as well around his love of music. And I think his love of music really informed the kind of comic that he was. You know, Mark had made the point of saying, you know, the drummer allegory, and I think that's very true. And I guess the only other thing I'd like to say is that when Mike died, it hit me a lot harder than I thought it was going to. And that's not a reflection of Mike, but I think it kind of snuck up on me a little bit. And I realize now that when Mike passed, I felt the same way as I did when people like Robin Williams died, or Carlin died, or Pryor died. And that's who Mike was. That's where he belonged, in that tier. And I'm profoundly grateful and feel profoundly blessed to have gotten the chance to learn from him and to be a part of the MacDonald's life. That's hard to say. And I wanted to, I do Mike's brother Dave some money. We'll talk about that a little later. You'd be surprised how many times, no, you wouldn't be surprised how many times he's asked me, actually, as a matter of fact. Right? That's okay. The Irish and the Italian, we get along. We're generally in the same mob, so it all works out. Once again, my thanks for letting me come up and say a little something about Mike. My most heartfelt and deepest condolences to you guys. It's been great to see a lot of my old comedy cohorts tonight, and to see the old gang here. It's really touched my heart, and I just want to kind of congratulate you guys as well. Like, to be in a room full of people who loved him when he brought so many people joy is a true honor. So I'd like to thank you for that. All right. Enough out of me. In case you couldn't see JP's facial expression, enough out of me. So I'd like to bring up your next comic, who I'm sure you'll recognize. Martha Chavez is certainly one of the finest working comics today. You've heard her on everything from CBC to Just for Laughs, and she's here today. Please welcome Martha Chavez.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. The first time I heard about Mike was when I took a comedy workshop with Andy Newman, the CEO of Just for Laughs, and he played My House, My Rules on a VHS. And he says, that's the king of Canadian comic. And then He was coming to Just for Life, and then I went to meet him. I wanted to meet the king. And I wasn't even doing comedy then. And I saw the king. He was this weirdo who was, who was sitting at a table with a fan. I don't mean a fanatic, I mean a fan. A battery-operated fan blowing in his face. And I went and touched his hair because I used to drink at the time. And I also grabbed his bag. No, not that bag. His medication bag. He had a little black bag that he brought on stage. And I touched it and I shaked it to know what it was in it, and it sounded like a maraca. Because he had all sorts of pills on the bag, and he didn't want to leave it at the hotel, because what if somebody steals it, And I thought he was very endearing. Then Howard Wagman books me to work with Mike MacDonald, and I have been warned by other comics that be careful with that guy, because he hates amateur comics. He hates them. He will tell you that if you don't make a bit work, in 2 weeks, he is gonna take it. And I was like, good luck with the Nicaraguan lesbian bit. And I wasn't terrified of him at all, but yes, I did tiptoe around him, and because you respect. I don't have reverence for anybody, but I did have reverence for Mike MacDonald, because I love comedy as much as he did love comedy. He said to me that I was a lifer. That's what he said, you're a lifer. I'm going to stay forever here. Next time you see me, I'll have a cane. That's what he meant, that he detected that in me, that love for stand-up comedy. But I had to host for him. And I'm like, I hope people understand what the hell I'm saying. It was a lot of pressure. But then, because I had already seen him, I had seen him on stage, I said when I introduced the show, I said, tonight you came to see a guy that when you see him perform, and you're a newer comic, it's like a newer painter watching Picasso paint. I said that because I didn't know anything about art. And because watching him perform was not watching Picasso, it was watching Michelangelo, with so much detail to everything he said. I remember Andy Nullman telling us, watch him without sound, and just watch his body language. And I got to work with him through the years. I lived in Ottawa for a while, and I got to hang out with him, and we became good friends. And when he needed his liver transplant, we did a lot of benefits for his liver transplant, and I would have given him mine, but I was an alcoholic, and he wasn't going to work. And then when he came back from his liver transplant, I used to tell him, oh my, that person that gave you the liver must have been really nice, because you changed a lot and for the best. They were probably very sweet, Mike. I loved everything about him. I loved the way he loved Bonnie. I loved the way he loved his cats. And he was like a lesbian that way, loving the cats. And once we asked him, my cousin Maria Amanda, who is present here, we asked, she has a charity for underprivileged girls in Nicaragua, and we asked him to do the charity, which was at 3 p.m. his favorite time to be up. You know what I mean? Somebody that stays up at night. That was not the ideal time. On top of it, there were a bunch of comics before him, and we were doing it at a high school, and there was a drum, so he's sitting there, pretending that he plays. And I'm like terrified. Mike is going to be mad. Mike is going to be mad. And I had told my cousin not to play Latin music because we didn't want to upset Mike. And, and then he goes like he was really frustrated because it was a long show with an auction in the middle. You know how happy he must have been. I would just check his eyebrows. But he wouldn't say anything to me bad. He was very kind to me. He was very lovely to me. He probably thought I was a pet or something. But then he goes up and he destroys. He get a standing ovation at the benefit. And then next year we ask him again, of course with a lot of care because we know that it's going to be a long show, and he accepted. And then the year after we asked him and he accepted. And now when he passed away, I called Maria Amanda. It was horrible. I was doing a festival in Sudbury, and I see the Facebook, and I see that Mike has passed away, and I felt, like sucker punch. And I tell the other comic, we cry, woo-hoo-hoo. And I tell the other comic, next time can be one of us. Meaning, we have to be as Mike, in a way, because if it's one of us, we want all of those nice things said about us. And my cousin just told me that there is going to be an award at the Home for Underprivileged Girls, an award for creativity named after Mike MacDonald. Yes. And he will be the second most famous MacDonald in Nicaragua. Thank you. Thank you very much. And now, a friend of Mike, somebody who's been was friend of Mike for about 40 years, the fabulous Simon Rakoff. Oh, no, sorry, I'm sorry. I am very clamped, I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, somebody who was best friend of Mike later on in life. Give it up for Mike Villan. Thank you, honey.
Great job.
Thank you.
Hey, give a round of applause. Martha Chavez, everybody. I don't know how to start any other way on stage. I've never had a show where I was worried about crying on stage. So, to be honest, mind if we move the picture just behind the curtain so I actually feel like I'm opening for him again? Mike's definitely, Mike and I've done more shows with Mike than any other comic. We worked for 15 years together on the road. He's such a great man. I met him in Montreal in 2003. I've heard of him leading up to that, but I never personally met him. And he came up to me in the lounge and congratulated me on a great show, introduced himself, and said, hey, we should hang out this week. And after that week, we had a great week, became friends and this and that. But he was the king of Canadian comedy, so he was very intimidating. A couple months later, I was in Los Angeles, and the place I was supposed to stay at fell through. So this is before cell phones. Cell phones were out, but that was just for the managers and producers. So all I had was a black Rolodex, and I'm on the side of the highway on La Cienega there in West Hollywood, and I'm going through it going, oh my God, I got nowhere to stay. And I go through it, and I'm going, who do I know in LA? And then boom, Mike MacDonald. But it was written down, the king of Canadian comedy. So I'm going, oh my God, am I really going to call Mike for a place to stay? So I waited about 3 days to get the courage and finally called him up, and it was noon, so he had just gone to bed. And he said, who's this? And I said, Matt from Calgary. What's your number? I gave him my number. He goes, I'll call you back in 5 hours. He calls me back, and he goes, Matt? I go, yeah. He goes, it took me a half hour to figure out who's got the balls to call me from Calgary. And I told him my situation, and he said, do you play NHL hockey? I said, yes. He goes, here's my address. Get in a cab. I'll pay for it when you get here. And that was the type of guy Mike was. He, for all the stories I heard, it was the opposite. If you got to know him, and I was a good enough friend that I got to hear his genuine, why, you know, or I heard the, he was just such, he was funny because he was so vulnerable, but nobody ever saw it. I mean, there was times where we'd be hanging out, and he'd come on TV. He'd want to turn the channel. I'd hide the controller. I go, no, you watch what you did. You watch what you did. And it was great to see such a big man that's, yeah, he was never too big for anything either. You know, for comics, he would go anywhere. He didn't want off days on the road. A lot of comics are too big for that. They only want to do theaters. And for Mike, he's like, I'd rather be working than an off day. You know, and we go to these small towns, and they go, why are you here? You know, and he go, what? He goes, your money's just as good as anybody else's. You know, and just Mike always just loved to perform. He knew it, never grew up. He was never going to stop comedy. He was more ahead, you know, he was on top of pop culture even today, you know. He never stopped. Even he was never comfortable in his career. I don't know if he was beaten down too hard before I met him, but he would always say to me, yeah, I only hold my breath underwater. I was like, okay, all right, well, you're going to get it. I think you're going to go back again. You did it last year. And, yeah, he used to tell me this reoccurring dream he used to have, that theater like this, and at the end of his show, he would fly over the audience, but nobody would look up. And he'd go, what do I got to do? But I'm going to miss him, as all you will. And there'll never be another one, and thank you. Your next. The next comic coming to the stage, I have the honor, we're in the same club. Mike, when the Bugs Bunny coin came out, as you know, Mike, that was his biggest influence, was Bugs Bunny. That's where the character came from. That's why he was so animated. He was a life cartoon, and so when Bugs Bunny came out with this the commemorative coin, you could only buy 5 per household. So Mike bought all 5, gave myself and Simon one, and kept 3 because he knew he'd lose them. So it's my honor to bring on one of Mike's great friends, Simon Ratkoff.
So what, 40? Am I doing 40? Hi, I'm popular Canadian comedian Simon Ratkoff. Thank you. I met Mike when I was 17 years old. He was a grown man of, 25 or something. To me, he was like, a man. He actually could go out, on school nights to do comedy. I knew him for 40 years, and Mike and I always got along. Obviously, I have a lot of really nice stories to tell about Mike, but this is neither the time nor place. It's so hard to sort of put this together so quickly. Mike was so big. Mike was bigger than everybody. And that was the thing about Mike, was he came to town. Now, most of us who are comedians, and this is not funny, but this is sort of the way it is, are funny guys. Like, I'm a funny guy, and I'm thinking, I'm funny, I'm smart, I'm lazy. What can I do that's going to be easy and fun? I know, I'll be a comedian, and it's fun, and I love it. Mike was never easy. Mike worked like a person with a job. All the time. Like, I always used to it was remarkable to me. To me, it was like, but if you're going to be putting in this kind of effort, you could have a good life. Like, you could have a job. You could be a success in the real world. Why would you do this and do that? Like, it doesn't even make sense to me. This is for people who don't want to work. Why are you here? And that's why Mike was so great, because Mike treated it seriously. Mike was a real artist, you know? And I mean a real artist. I remember going to a show once with Mike, not a show, like a cafe that had an art show. And it was a bunch of, you know, splashes of paint on canvas. And Mike said to me, they have it backwards, these people. You see these artists sitting around and all they do is complain and bitch about their life. And then their work is like, so that's not how you do it, you know? You work hard at the work. Let your life be a party. After the show, Mike went crazy. And we had these nights at the original club on Bay Street where Mike would show these weird movies Mickey would bring. Remember those weird movies? It was just like jelly beans flowing over the screen, and they'd play music loud into the night, and Mike would dance around, and it was just nuts, right? But up there on stage, Mike was not playing. Mike put in the work. Mike made sure that every moment of everything, like ballet, like opera, Mike was so exacting about the quality of his work, and that's why he's the best. Because the rest of us, you know, we're fucking around, let's face it. Anyway, how'd that work out for you, Mike? Sorry, that was inappropriate. I loved Mike, I really did. We were friends very early, actually. It was funny, we were unlikely friends. We had nothing in common other than we both love comedy and would sit there and just shtick back and forth for hours on end. But really, I can't think of a more sort of opposite person than this, you know, tough army brat looking for a fight, and me, the, you know, urban Jew son of two doctors. It was just like, are we even the same species? But comedy brought us together, and when Mike got sick, I remember, you know, it was just strange to see Mike, who was always the picture of strength. I mean, that was the thing about Mike, was he came to town as a young man, and he was just looking for a fight. And people were scared of Mike, and I always thought of it more like an action movie, where he's like, I must find a foe who is worthy of me, you know? And so we got along great, Mike and I always loved him. And when he got sick and he was weak, I just felt like, this ain't right. This isn't right. This is like, you know, when you see a lion who's, you know, lost a paw in a trap or something. And then he came back, and it was like a miracle to see him come back and like a plant, like blooming back into what he was. And that he left at full strength again was so beautiful. And, you know, we're all better for having known him. We love him. Your next guest, ladies and gentlemen, you may have seen him on, Mike used to come back from Chicago and talk about his buddy Len, who he said was so funny, and he would repeat Len's bits and tell me about how funny Len was and how they'd hang out all night. And finally tonight I get to meet Len, and it's a treat to introduce him. Len Ostrovich, folks. Have fun, buddy.
I said I wanted a chord on this mic. I had a little bit different relationship with Mike than a lot of these comedians up here. I met Mike in a bathhouse in Glendale. Or was it Echo Park? I don't know, Bonnie. You were working the entrance there. Had he sent me that money in Vegas, I wouldn't have done that bit. I told him, you're going to regret it if you don't give me that $200. And who got the last word at me? But seriously, there were a lot of things I didn't like about Mike. And I can go on tonight, and I'm going to. So, Rich, take a knee. I did not like the fact that Mike would order 2 hamburgers, 2 poached eggs, 2 glasses of ice, and skim milk. Who the fuck drinks milk with hamburgers? I found out tonight what was in that bag. Those were drugs. It was his medication. I'm so pissed off. He never let me look in that bag, and he always promised me it was Bunny's head. I got Bunny's head in there. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. I hate the fact that after 30 years or 40 or whatever the fuck it is, I've known him. I'm sorry if I'm swearing. I'm sorry. I don't have one picture without his eyes crossed or weird face. Every picture, please, Mike, just one. Let me just have one picture, and that includes my brother's funeral. He wouldn't do it. I could go on and on, but I met Mike the first time I met him. I used to have a club in Chicago, a comedy club, and young punk kid, I'm gonna buy my way into show business. I'm gonna book all these guys I like, and there was a bunch of them that I loved, Richard Jenny and Bill Hicks and Mike, all dead. All three of them are dead. And Scheidner, get your affairs in order. You're next. Okay. Might not want to hang out with that Len guy. He's not real lucky with those genius comics. And I pick him up in the airport because that's what I did. I was like, I'm a comic. I'm going to treat these guys right. I pick him up at the airport, gets in the car. Hey, how's it going? Hey, Gary Rendell from Spotlight says you're really funny. Yeah, I guess. 20 minutes of silence back to the hotel. Just as we're pulling up, and I said, hey, I don't know what the fuck it is about you with your little satin Showtime jacket and that Eddie Munster haircut of yours. Yeah, I watched your tape, but if you don't cut the shit with that attitude, you're not going to get paid this week. No limo anymore. Give me your receipts. You'll get reimbursed. And I was so mean, and from that point on, we were like best friends because we just, he couldn't believe someone who didn't know him treated him like that. And that was really the basis of our relationship, was this mean, evil, mean sense of humor. The meaner, the better. The more he would say, Bonnie didn't like that one, the better I felt. She didn't like that one. You just do that one for Len. But I learned a lot from Mike. I learned that you didn't always have to be mean to be funny, and if you were, you don't be mean to people that can't defend themselves. I remember we were driving one time, and we saw this place that was for special needs people, and I made a joke, and he's like giving me shit, and I'm like, you're giving me stuff about what to do, and he explained to me, well, if someone can't defend themselves, that's an easy target, don't do that. He taught me dedication. We spent so much time working on our harebrained screams that we were going to break through in Hollywood with our movies and sketches. He was always very nice, always took the time to be with me, and he was just such a gracious guy and never said no and never took money. I never offered him money, but he didn't take any money. Oh, here through Thursday. But he was just, and my relationship was different from him. The last few years we were hanging out, we were just, you heard all the comedy stuff. This is a great Canadian king of comedy. Blah, blah, blah. But I knew him as just like Mike. We were just friends, and he was like my comedic or entertaining soulmate. We learned to talk in shorthand, and we would just do our one-lines from the movies. No bad for you, or whatever it was. And I remember I used to do this character, and he loved that character, and so that became our thing. And then he and I just always did it, and all the guys that we hung around did it, and it was that shorthand. And I couldn't believe that this guy liked every movie I liked, whether it was King of Comedy or, my proudest moment is when I showed him Paper Moon. He'd never seen it. And I'm like, you've never seen Paper Moon? And there was just dozens of obscure films that we knew. And we sat down there, and I said, you got to watch it. And I had just watched it a couple nights earlier, so I popped the tape, and I go, and I'm walking back. And he's just sitting on the bed there, and I go, and I come back 20 minutes later. He was enthralled in that. And he thought that was the greatest movie. And that's how intense he was with everything. He would study it. He would, well, it was a great movie, great movie. And he just sat there, and it always affected me that he took an hour and a half and he just sat, because that's how dedicated he was to absorbing comedy and filmmaking. And, you know, he was very mean to me. He used to, his favorite thing was to get my 12-year-old son just out of earshot so I could hear him showing him Weeds. Remember that? There was a movie or a show on Showtime. This is Weeds. Hey, what are you doing? He's 10. This is about selling pot. Whatever. Don't worry about it. Don't do that. You can't influence him that way. And then 2 hours later, he's playing Grand Theft Auto with my son. These are my favorite scenes from Pulp Fiction. What the fuck? And those two were fast friends, and he would sit with him, and we would go out to meals, and he really connected with my son. And we would joke. Our favorite joke is that when we were doing this movie, we would edit, but we weren't like a regular director, writer, actor, editors. We would stay in the editing room for 4 days straight, nonstop, burning. We talked about how we wanted to burn. There was no editor that could keep up with us, one after another. And our thing was, we'd work with them until they fucking snap. And that was his big joke. And he came up with this bit that when a monk wanted to come in and get his final vows, he would have to come in with the other master, and they would open the doors to the editing suite. When you can spend 4 hours with Mike and Len, then you will be a monk. So my son liked that, and my memories, you know, he knew about priorities. When we were shooting our little movie, my brother was sick and dying of cancer, and I remember he calls us up. Is Mike there? Let me talk to Mike. You guys got to come over and visit. You got to visit. I'm like, oh, we can't, and we got to shoot late, and we got to look at stuff. And Mike goes, we're going to visit your brother. We went to see him, and unfortunately passed away a couple days after that. But that's has nothing to do with being funny or, you know, the king of Canadian comedy. And shit, I was hoping I could get through this. And he was there at the funeral and spent time with my family, not making them laugh and not being wacky, just hugging everybody and being my friend. And I'm most thankful for my son got very sick and got a tumor and had cancer, and he passed away. But those 2 years before he died, those are the memories of when he wasn't sick. And it's so tied in with Mike. And I'm so thankful that I got that, because I think about Mike telling Miles, don't download music from Napster. Because he respected the artist. Pay for it. And my son never downloaded anything from that point. He would save his money and pay for the music. Because Mike was so dedicated to art. And I remember my son, one time, I didn't even know he said this, I had a set of drums in the basement. Mike went back to California and he goes, Mike's going to teach me to play the drums. And it was just like that thing I didn't even know it happened. And so I'm so thankful for that time, and it's very selfish, and I feel good about, you know, our time together, of course. And I'm talking about these movies and all this stuff that we did. You don't have to wait for YouTube. I'll be selling them in the lobby afterwards. I know $100 might seem gouging to you, but Howard Lapidus will be out there, and he wanted you to know he's waiving half his commission for... All right, I made it. All right. Now it's time to bring up Shatner. This was a guy who I also became very good friends with. My introduction to Scheidner was talking about MacDonald, which I didn't know that these guys were, old friends. So one night Mike's going up in my club. I'm trying to, put some people in after the show started, and they ended up, don't worry, you could stay over and see, watch the headline, stay over for the turnover, you can watch the beginning of the show. And so they did that, and I got my 2 drink minimums on both shows from them. Something Breslin would like. And Mike's, walking around, what the hell are those people doing over there? I go, well, you came to the first show, they're staying. You can't do that. They just saw my jokes. I go, Mike, they're leaving. Fuck that, you can't. And he disappears. Comes back there. Sure enough, those people stayed over. They watched his other show. And Mike went up and did another hour and a half, just like right after each other, of a different show. Not repeated one thing. I'm like, holy shit. And I've had a club, and that's probably one of the most amazing things I ever said. So anyway, blown away by that. He goes back. Scheidner comes in the week later. And I said, you know this Mike MacDonald guy? Yeah, I know him. I go, this guy did 2 sets. He did an hour with a standing ovation, did another show, an hour and a half, another standing ovation. To which Scheidler replied, I could fucking do that. And he did. And so they were very competitive and good friends. And if that's any introduction, that's it. So let's bring to the stage now a gentleman who's been traveling all over the world. My good buddy, my common thread, Mr. Rich Scheidner, everybody.
Thank you. Len Ostrovich, digging a hole and then climbing out of it. Mike, man. I actually brought a set list, because Mike always had set lists when I first met him. I love this because I've gotten from JP and other people so many stories. And we all have a different experience with Mike because we spent different times with him. We have these different stories, So JP told me that Mike was like not just a little, he told me, we met once, he goes, yeah, I disco danced once. So I don't know how it came up, but my impression was he said he disco danced once, which I thought, okay, everybody got drunk, and disco danced once. But JP said no. No. He was into it, man. Into it. The whole outfit, the Saturday Night Fever, John Travolta outfit, with the shoes, the heels, the whole thing, and could dance, could really do it, And I thought, wow, because when I met Mike, he was in a punk. Let me see if I can do this. Shit, can't do it. I'll figure it out. But he was in a punk, man, punk. Now, how can a guy, because those were totally different camps. This is a guy that could straddle both punk and disco. I mean, nobody did that. Nobody. I mean, I met him. It was shaved head. It was like, and he was on the edge of both of them. Because I met the guy. I'd come up to my first tour, 1980. I get up to Ottawa. I'm working Ottawa. I'm killing it, right? I'm killing it. My first time out of the States, killing it, first time. And they go, and I'd finish, guys, people come to me and go, we got a guy like you up here. I go, who's that? We had a guy so I go to Montreal. Next week I'm in Montreal. Same thing, I'm killing it. People come up to me, we got a guy like you up here. Who's that? Then I go to Yuck Yucks in Toronto. Next week I come in there, right? I do the first night, I just destroy it, right? Destroy it. Because I come off stage and all these comics are in the back. And I come in there and it was like a movie, man. They parted like the water, like Moses. And I'm staring at this guy, I go, that's the guy. I knew immediately, man, that's the guy. And he looks at me, we go like this. Like old gunfighters, right? Lock, man, lock. First night says, come on back to my place. Come on back to my place, man. Come on back. Canadian hot knives, that's what he called it, right? I go, what's that? We're going to do Canadian hot knives. But first, drop the acid. We're dropping acid. And we're doing Canadian hot knives. I go, what's this Canadian hot knife? Some sort of, like a burning, like a flaming Hawaiian dance or something, He brings out a knife, man, and he sticks a big hunk of hash on it. Then he takes the other knife and he sticks it in the oven flame, man, until it's not like a little warm, it's red hot, glowing. Then he slams the red hot knife on the other knife with the hash in between, and smoke comes exploding off it. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but Mike's method was he'd slam it, he goes, dinner time! And 5 other comics would like dive in there to suck the smoke out of the air. And it was like slam dance. You see guys bouncing off each other's heads. And Mike had turned it into a Darwinian exercise of doing pot. I found out later, most people go, it's your turn. Here you go, hot knives. That was not Mike's way, you know. So, of course, we tripped on acid that first night. Mike, everybody's right. Everything is said. Mark, Martha, everybody, he worked hard. We were so intense and into it. We were so greedy, more material. Mike and I used to say to each other all the time, we started that, and he'd say it to other comics, he'd say something funny in conversation, I go, you got a week to get that on stage. He goes, oh, I'm doing it tonight. So we tripped that first night. Simon was there. A lot of comics were there, right? We were so funny. We laughed so much, man. Just constant, 8 hours of laughing. The next day I see Mike at the club, and he goes, we were so funny. We got to tape that. Tonight we're going to trip again. And we're going to tape it, man. We're going to have so much material. We're just going to divvy up all this material because we're going to tape it, man. So he had his boombox, which I'll talk about in a minute. So he tapes it with a boombox. He tapes it, and we're like, same thing, just hours and hours of laughter. So the next day, when we finally get up, he goes, come on over, we're going to divvy up the treasure chest, man. We come over, notepads, man, we're ready to start writing, Mike puts in the first tape, and there were about 4 tapes, man. He puts in the first tape, he hits it, somebody says, I can't open the window, and there's 15 minutes of laughter. But it was the effort that was important. It was the effort. So I'm going to jump around, but this is a time sequence because there were some drugs. There were a lot of course, there were drugs. And Mrs. MacDonald, I know you're here, and I just met you the first time, but she knows there were drugs. We loved acid. Mike and I loved acid. So cut to a couple of years later, I'm going to time jump. I know you can keep up. A couple of years later, we're playing a club in Ocean City, Maryland. Mike and I are playing this club with another comic named Kevin Rooney, and we're tripping, and we get invited to go to Rehoboth Beach, which is right next door. Now Ocean City, Maryland was white trash, drunken craziness, but Rehoboth Beach was a real Christian, family-oriented, no drinking allowed beach. But we show up because we're invited there. They drove us up there. Obviously, they drove us up. 3 pie-eyed, tripping our brains out, right? Put us in the middle of this, right? And I'm like, I just remember, I was just like staring at the sand, when it was like, I wonder how much sand's in here, How far is China? That. And I look up and I see Mike out in the surf, right? And my first thought was, man, he's doing a funny bit about a drowning guy, He's rolling around, I'd see his feet come up, then I'd see him bounce up and he'd go down. And then after a minute, through the acid, I went, I don't think he's kidding around, man. And Rooney says this later. Rooney just said, I bolted off I just ran into the ocean and dragged him out. I mean, he was like, he was drowned. I dragged him out and I pulled him in. Now, as soon as I pull him out, I realized he's naked. He's naked, man. The surf had stripped off his shorts, man. And there's all these kids around, so I just sit him down in the beginning, like the kiddie end of the pool of the ocean, I sit him down, right, because I'm going to get towel. And he's coughing up water. He goes, I forgot I couldn't swim. So Mike's joke after that was he understood why people would do acid and think they could fly and jump out of windows after that. So the first time, I come in the Toronto, the first night we get together, that Mike doesn't perform right away. Like a night or two later, he performs, right? And he does great. Now, and then everybody's doing the rock star bit. Do the rock star bit. I said, what's that? Mike says, not only do that when I close the show. So the next night I go, do the rock star bit, man. I want to see the rock star bit. Big mistake. I'm following the rock star bit. So you've seen it. You all know what I'm talking about. So he does a rock star bit. At the time, I had a bit, about a 10-minute piece about going to rock concerts. Everybody went to rock concerts, And I had a big piece in there where I did air guitar, mimicking guys that would play air guitar in the audience when Eric Clapton was on stage. Immediately, first thing I did was drop that bit. No sense ever doing that again. I saw the rock concert. That bit is gone. So I lost a bit. Now, it's true, we're competitive. And Howie came up and told me this beforehand. Because before I come in the first time, and I always did this, I come in, Howie's the manager. First night, I go, who's got the record? That's all I wanted to know. Who's got the record? He said, Mike MacDonald, 2 hours. I said, I'm beating that tonight. Because that's all Mike would do the same thing. Go into town, who's got the record? All we want, who's got the record? So I did 2.5 hours that night, Now, the next week, Mike is headlining. So I'm back in New York. 3 o'clock in the morning, I get a ringing phone call. I pick it up, 3 hours, hung up. Now, I fell in love with Mike. Immediately, it was on, man. And so I helped anything, so gigs bring him down into the States. Come down to New York the first time he comes down to New York. Now, people talked about this. We were not kind people, Mike and I, in a lot of ways. Mike, a lot of people, when they get nervous, they jabber a lot, they get fidgety. Mike got a no trespassing sign on his face. And so when I first brought him down to New York, I had a girlfriend at the time I'm lived with. He's staying with us. My girlfriend said, I don't get that guy. I don't get that guy, man. He just sits there. He had that boombox. That boombox was everywhere. It got us thrown out of cabs. He had no control over that thing, man. The cab be like, turn that down, Mike. Like, And it wasn't playing Beatles back then, man. It was like, it was just punk, hardcore punk, And I had a Walkman. I'd go, how about playing Elvis Costello? No. Just Ramones, just Clash, no Elvis Costello. That's another story. So my girlfriend is angry. She's like not happy with this guy I'm staying. So one night, it's like 3 or 4 in the morning. We're going winding things down, And Mike has not been funny. Like the first night, he's just not funny. He's just been angry and playing loud music and fighting with her, kind of fighting. And so I go thinking, I want to wind things down nice. I want to put on Box of Rain. I want to put on a Grateful Dead song. So I go, I want to put on Grateful Dead. And Mike immediately goes, Grateful Dead. He has a convulsion. And my girlfriend starts laughing because it's Mike. It's a funny convulsion, And then I put it on, and he takes it off, and we have a wrestling match with the needle, I put it on, he takes it off, put it on, then we're fighting each other, And she's laughing, and then I finally put it on, and Mike starts hippie dancing. And I've never seen anybody do a funnier hippie dance ever. And Mike does it. And we go back into the bedroom, and the girlfriend goes to me, I get him. He made her laugh. I got it. He just, that's, everybody who met him was kind of the same way. It took a little time. It took a little time. He wasn't the kinder Mike that you met later. It took a little time. And I'm going to tell a couple stories here, because I'm going to tell a couple stories here. And one of them is a story. People, since I put on Facebook about Mike and all, people sent me all these stories. They sent all these stories to tell stories. And this is who Mike was. So Pam Stone is a comedian. She was on a show Coach, and she was working with Mike in Las Vegas one year. They're working together in Las Vegas. I'm telling a story. So Pam, they're walking through the lobby. We're going to the show at the Improv. They're walking in the lobby of a casino. And Mike has got on his suit, black tie, and he's got that purposeful look. And he's carrying his tape player in his hand. So he's like, and she's walking with him. So some people spot him, and he looks like security. So they run up. Security, security, there's a fight at the entrance. Mike goes, on my way. And he goes running up to the entrance, like, And Pam's running along with you. And so these two guys are wrestling, and a whole bunch of people around them watching these two guys wrestling. Mike jumps in, all right, break it up, break it up, break it up. And one of the guys pulls out a knife, and Mike goes, a knife! And he runs off. Because he made one person laugh. This is another one. I'm going to tell this. Okay, I lied. 2 stories from other people, and then 2 from Mike. But these, I know. Okay, JP. 1 story. 2 from Mike. These are two from Mike. I'm moving, JP. These are 2 from Mike. He tells these stories so great, but he's not here tonight, so I'm going to do them. So Mike is got the boombox, and he's had it everywhere. He took it everywhere. I saw one fly. There were incarnations. I saw one fly out the window at the old apartment with Mickey's. I saw one fly out. I have a receipt for it. These were $525. Somehow the equalizer didn't work. It went flying out, but he always had them. So he taped his shows. I tape his shows. So he's playing Garvin's in Washington, D.C. It's a 4th of July weekend, 4th of July night. So in Washington, D.C., big fireworks on the mall, huge fireworks show. Club owner insists on doing a show that night. Oh, there'll be lots of people want to come to the comedy show after the fireworks. 6 people show up. 6 people. Mike's like, we don't want to do a show. The club owner's like, going to do a show. Got to do a show. Mike goes, the club owner leaves. So Mike's steaming. The first guy bombs. 6 people, can't work him. 6 people, bombs. Mike goes on stage with a boombox, sits it up there and goes, you people should be home. But if you want a show, this is a tape from last night's show. Packed house. This is what you're getting from me tonight. And he sticks it in a boombox in front of the mic, and he starts playing it, and he leaves. And he goes back to the front, and he starts playing pinball again. So the club owner comes back in, and he thinks Mike's on stage. He sees Mike at the front playing pinball. He goes, who's on stage? Mike goes, I am. The club owner goes running back, and Mike says, I followed him. They go back, 6 people like this, laughing at the tape of his show the night before. All right. This is the last one, and this is, to me, this shows the obsessive nature of Mike, the dedication, so Mike is playing a club in Tulsa, Oklahoma that I helped hook up, and I knew it's real Bible Belt, real tough. And Mike, we talked about, Mark, everybody talked about it. He was an act out. He did the act out, and he's working this club, and he's struggling, night after night, struggling. They're not getting him. And I knew that because I knew it was I told him you had to set the mower low and cut the grass in this club. But Mike's not bending, man. It's not bending. And he's having so one night he's working. A guy, one of the audience members stands up and goes, "Are you gay?" And Mike didn't have an answer. And he just goes, "Are you not having fun? All right. How much you pay to get in? $10? Here's $10. Go. You go home. Take yours." So all the people going, "Hey, I'd like to leave." All right, everybody gets paid. Everybody. I'm paying everybody's cover back. 100 people, whatever. Everybody gets their cover back. Go out there and get your cover back. All right? And the waitresses go, "Well, we're going to make money. How much you get paid? How much would you make in tips tonight? $100? Here's everybody. Here's your 100. Here's your 100. Everybody out. Everybody out." And the club owner's like, "You can't just give away 10. Prorate me." Club owner goes, "Cool. I'm cool with that. I'm cool." Mike footed the bill. Everybody got paid. Everybody goes. But Mike told me the whole flight home, he's angry at himself. I didn't have a good comeback for that. "Are you gay?" I didn't have a good comeback. And he couldn't sleep for days. Weeks, it bothered him from time to time. This guy said, "Are you gay?" And I had no comeback, man. That's as a comic what killed him. No comeback for that. "Are you gay?" No comeback. 10 years later, Mike's working Fort McMurray. Well, some people don't know Fort McMurray. Struggling a little bit. Bunch of guys were heckling the first acts, and nobody threw them out, and they were disrupting the show. So Mike gets on stage, and one of the guys goes, "Are you gay?" Mike says, "Well, why don't you come on stage and drop your pants? If I fuck you in the ass, I'm gay." If I kick you in the ass, I'm not. Huge laugh. Mike wins the crowd. Thank you very much. Good night.